Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are unpacking something absolutely massive. We're looking at a project of truly staggering ambition, known as the Unified Theory of Geologic History, or UTGH. And listen, this isn't just some minor tweak to a few geological timelines here and there. No, it is an audacious attempt to literally rewrite the entire surface history of our planet using just a single dramatic mechanism. We're going to explore how one proposed catastrophic event aims to explain a massive inventory of geologic, biological, and even astronomical anomalies, all without relying on special, one-off conditions. So let's just jump right into the sheer scale of what's being proposed here. To really wrap your head around this framework, you first have to grasp the mind-bending energy output it proposes. 9.84 times 10 to the 25th joules. I mean, what does that even mean, right? To put it into perspective, that is roughly the equivalent of 246 Chicxulub asteroids, the exact kind that wiped out the dinosaurs, hitting the Earth all at once. But here's the wild part. UTGH proposes this wasn't an impact from above, it was an explosion from below. A single, catastrophic rupture event occurring approximately 5,300 years ago, releasing this incomprehensible amount of energy from a supercritical subterranean water reservoir. Think of it like a highly pressurized, scorching hot ocean suddenly bursting from beneath the Earth's crust.
I absolutely love the framing of this theory because it treats the Earth like a giant global crime scene. The author, Darrell Waters, suggests that the physical evidence scattered across the globe, specifically these massive, chaotic graveyards of animal bones, is basically demanding a unified explanation. So instead of looking at these bone beds as isolated, localized mysteries, the framework looks at the overall global pattern. And its conclusion? The answer at every single site is continental-scale water, and it was moving fast.
Now, to really get what's at stake here, we have to neutrally lay out the two competing frameworks we're discussing today. On one side, we have uniformitarianism. This is the dominant consensus model in mainstream geology. It essentially states that Earth's surface features are formed slowly, over millions of years, through the exact same ongoing processes we see outside our windows today, like gradual erosion and slow sedimentation. On the other side, we have UTGH. This is a catastrophist framework. It proposes that the surface we see today was rapidly reshaped by that single recent rupture event, superimposed right on top of an already ancient planet.
So let's look at the standard model first. Uniformitarianism interprets sedimentary rock as layered sequences that represent vast, incredibly slow epochs of time. Literally every geology textbook and museum exhibit you've ever seen relies on this model. Under this view, when you're looking at layers of sandstone, limestone, and shale out in nature, you are looking at millions of years of gradual deposition. Each distinct layer represents a completely different environment or epoch deep in the Earth's past.
Well, UTGH completely flips the script. It counters the standard model by proposing that the continental sedimentary record is, for all intents and purposes, a planetary scale sequence of waterborne sediment, driven by the explosive, faster-than-sound decompression of that hidden subterranean ocean we talked about. The expelled water violently spread across the continents. It then hydraulically sorted these exact same sedimentary layers by particle size and density. According to UTGH, these layers weren't formed over millions of years at all. They were sorted and deposited in a matter of hours or days.
Actually, hold on. Let's clear up a major misconception right here, because this is absolutely crucial. UTGH does not dispute the 4.5 billion year age of the Earth. Not at all. It fully accepts mainstream cosmological and radiometric estimates for the age of the universe, our solar system, and the Earth's deep original basement rocks. What it strictly disputes is the timeline and formation of the Earth's surface, specifically the sedimentary layers and how biological life was distributed on top of that ancient planetary foundation.
And this brings us to a really fascinating philosophical difference in how we deal with geological anomalies. The source material argues that standard geology relies heavily on what's called special pleading. That means it uses a bunch of isolated, localized excuses, like, say, a random flash flood over here or a sudden freak landslide over there, to explain unusual features. UTGH, however, demands one single mechanism with zero exceptions. It argues that if you have a global pattern, you need a global explanation, rather than inventing a highly specific, unique story for every single anomalous site.
Let's look at a concrete example: polystrate fossils. Specifically, imagine vertical dinosaur bones that span straight up through multiple sedimentary layers. Uniformitarianism explains this through unusual local events, like maybe a sudden sandbar collapsed and buried the bones super quickly in that specific spot. UTGH looks at those exact same bones and sees a global momentum cascade. Because these bones frequently cluster near mountains that were supposedly forming during the rupture event, UTGH argues they were sorted by massive flood currents and sunk by earthquake liquefaction. Essentially, solid ground temporarily turned to soup and they sank. All at once. One event. The whole shebang.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's a wild story, but any grand theory is just a story, unless it can be proven wrong. And UTGH goes out of its way to emphasize that it is not built on blind faith. It is presented as a rigorously testable, forensic, and highly falsifiable framework. The author practically invites the scientific community to test it, stating that the predictions that falsify the framework are just as informative as those that confirm it. It is the ultimate pass or fail test.
This is where it gets really fun. UTGH makes incredibly specific predictions that can be tested right now using existing archives. We're talking no new expensive fieldwork required. For instance, it predicts that the oldest giant sequoia trees will actually lack annual growth rings in their innermost pre-flood cores. It predicts that lunar regolith, the dust and soil sitting on the moon, will contain chemical fingerprints originating directly from Earth. And it makes equally bold predictions about deep coral cores pulled from Pacific atolls.
So, let's break down how this investigation works in practice. If scientists analyzed archived sequoia cores and find totally normal annual growth rings in that ancient wood, the theory fails. If they test the moon dust and find absolutely zero chemical fingerprints from Earth, the entire lunar ejectoronal fails. If engineers use advanced computer simulations and prove that massive sauropod dinosaurs could easily survive and walk around in today's gravity and atmospheric pressure, well, the biomechanics argument falls apart. Any one of these failing would instantly shatter the entire UTGH framework. The objective, scientific rigor of this approach is just absolute. As the framework itself points out, a theory that explains everything but predicts nothing is essentially useless. By openly laying out exact, testable scenarios that would destroy its own arguments, UTGH is attempting to play strictly by the rules of the scientific method. If the evidence fails, the theory fails. And honestly, that is exactly how any massive paradigm shift needs to be tested.
Okay, but let's play this out for a second. What if these pass-fail tests actually succeed? What if the sequoia rings match the prediction? The moon dust has Earth's signature, and the biomechanics math checks out. The scientific fallout would be unlike anything we have seen in modern history. Let's really unpack the staggering implications of what happens to modern science if this single 5,300-year-old catastrophic event is validated by our physical archives.
Stacking up the sheer scale of the disruption, entirely established scientific disciplines would literally be on the brink. Our whole understanding of deep-time rock layers completely reevaluated as catastrophic water sorting. The starting assumptions used to date rocks with radiation overturned. The biological physics of massive ancient animals, our fundamental understanding of fossils, and even the genetic mapping used to trace human ancestry, all of it would either have to radically change to fit a recent population bottleneck or simply disappear entirely. It's a complete domino effect.
Throughout all of this, UTGH insists that it is a strictly evidence-led framework. It claims to impartially let the physical records from 4 totally independent observational domains, the geological layers, the biological fossils, the astronomical data, and the genetic mapping, just speak for themselves. The goal here, as presented by the source material, is to write history in a way that actually makes sense of the anomalies, rather than treating them as isolated, awkward exceptions to the rule.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we're exploring today. What if every geology textbook, every museum placard, and every deep-time documentary you've ever seen was suddenly rendered obsolete? Not by some brand new discovery in the field, but simply by re-examining the archived evidence of a single 5,300-year-old event. The stakes for scientific inquiry literally couldn't be higher. Whether UTGH eventually passes or fails its rigorous tests, it forces every single one of us to look closer at the world beneath our feet and ask, what is the evidence truly telling us?